What's up, everybody? Welcome to Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Katie Mox. Today we're talking U.S. Open tennis with Andrew Anderson, but nobody calls him that. This is Dubbsie. You know him. You love him from FanDuel TV, TVG, and much more. Dubbsie, you like to join us early in the morning at 6 a.m. LA time. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. I'm a fast starter. And look, the dog days of summer are done. We got football we're getting ready for. Postseason, the baseball not too far away. And the fourth slam of the season. A bit of tennis over in your neck of the woods. So very excited. And if we can wager on it, Mox, we talking about it. So you know I'm charged up.
All right. Well, you always charge me up. Your energy is infectious, even through the screen. All right, let's get started with the U.S. Open. Now, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle, I guess, if you will, between Coco Gauff, one of our Americans, and a German player about slow play. I don't really know what's going on, so I'm looking for you to tell me about this. But I did see that the German player was crying, and she felt like the crowd was really mean to her. What happened?
Hey, I mean, it's 2023. These spectators are jumping the fence. They're hugging baseball players, and now they're giving a bit of
Yes.
feedback out there on the court. So not good to see. And Coco Gauff is always going to voice her frustrations and her opinion. I love Coco. I think she would be one of the best chances we've got on the American side of things anyway. But yeah, I mean, looking through the early rounds there, it didn't sort of pair well. But this is the tactics that we see in modern tennis, a bit of gamesmanship, and Coco Gauff getting a little lamped up. But as we saw in the post-match presser, there was nothing in it. You know,
Yeah.
they get a little emotional
Yeah.
out there,
They're
move
tired.
on to the next ones. And Coco Gauff, I tell you what, we'll get to some of the plays. Do not be going against in this tournament. She is in a really, really good vein of form right now.
All right. Well, there's something that I always appreciate about tennis are the celebrities that are sitting amongst the regular folk, particularly at the US Open. There's a lot of them. Any favorite celeb sightings or stars that we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, I've watched the first weekend. I keep looking for Katie Mox to show up courtside, and
I
TMZ
wish.
will be will be getting the snapshots moving in. But look, it's been an absolute star-studded cast that we've seen there. The Obamas have been there, Seal has been there, Danny DeVito, the legend, Mike
Ooh.
Tyson, Lindsey Vonn, and of all these celebrities, can you imagine Mike Tyson actually out there trying to play a bit of tennis?
No.
I mean, Mike going to the chair umpire, that was in. No, it wasn't. Actually, Mike, you're right. Yeah, that was in his little white shorts. Come on now. But look, a lot of A-listers week one. Nothing gets too serious week one. You know, we
Yeah.
move through the early stages. The field continues to dwindle down. Week two is where it gets serious. I think that's where we see the heavy hitters showing out.
Okay, I'm so well, and like last year was so fun, right? Because it was Serena's kind of last
Yeah.
hurrah, and she got out of the first round, and everybody was rallying behind her. So I hope we have something kind of similar, to bring us all together. But let's look at these women's odds to win the 2023 U.S. Open. Obviously, Swiatek. I mean, she's going to be the favorite, plus 200. You got Goff in there at plus 600, and then a bunch of names that I will absolutely butcher. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Dubsy. Who are we thinking?
Iggy, and we ain't talking Iggy Azalea, Iggy Swiatek. I mean, it was just 18 months ago when we're thinking who's going to be the next top of the women's side of things, and Swiatek comes along and has absolutely dominated now. 4 slams to her name, 3 at Roland Garros, a winner here last year at the US Open, so certainly a surface that plays well to her game. We saw that streak of 37 consecutive
Woo.
wins through 2022. Very impressive. And look, we always see a bit of chaos on the ladies' side of the draw, and we're still seeing a pretty good price. I've seen Iga Swiatek hovering right around plus 210, plus 200, which I think is fantastic. You look at the women's side of things, there's always that propensity for a bit more chaos, the old upset, but the way Iggy's playing and some of these other ladies up top, I think she's certainly the class of the field. And what makes her so special is she's got this athleticism. I think she stands at about 5'9", 22 years of age. So she's big. She's got that strength, but absolutely lightning around the court, has some fantastic coverage. So trying to go against Iga Swiatek at that kind of price, certainly going to be the one to beat.
Well, and Iggy had a disappointing Wimbledon, right? So she's probably looking
Yeah.
for a little bit of a bounce back. Obviously, she was the favorite there. I mean, she's the favorite everywhere. So we might even be getting a little bit better odds here, right? At plus 200. I mean, I saw her Wimbledon. Sometimes she was like minus 300, 400, like really, really high up there. So this is probably a good time to buy in on a number one because she's coming off of kind of a disappointing performance.
Yeah, I think we could buy into the fact that she also comes to a really tough second round matchup, and you don't want to go through three setters through the first week. It is a little taxing and tiring, but you want to be tested early to ensure that your game is sharp, it is dialed moving into the second week, the quarterfinals for Swiatek. Bidding that she does get there, but yes, looks fantastic on the grass at Wimbledon. Obviously, a much different surface and the way the ball's going to play didn't suit her in that spot. But returning to where we had the good vibes from last year's win here at Flushing Meadows, a lot to like about Iga Swiatek at plus 200. I don't know if you're going to get that price moving into week two.
I love that. All right, so we're definitely going chalk. Anyone else on the value side? I mean, you did mention Coco Gauff a little bit. Would you sprinkle a little bit on this plus 600 or any value picks here?
Yeah, I would. I think Coco Gauff is certainly going to be the top chance on the American side of things. You look at the form, 2 wins in August alone coming into this tournament, has the size, has that big serve, very well suited to the hard court, and wants to be on this stage. We now look at the betting markets, I think sitting right around third favourite, so that price is starting to shorten up, but at 19 years of age, has that X factor, and right now is playing the best tennis we've ever seen. In terms of other value plays on the women's side, Ons Jabeur, close without getting it done. Fifth in the world rankings. You can look at other ways to approach some of these numbers. If you think 22 to 1, 23 to 1, you're taking a bit of a flyer. You can also bet some of the different markets, like making it through to the semifinals, right around 5 to 1, plus 500
Mm.
there for Ons Jabeur. Continues to dominate at the slams, but as soon as we get to the finals, it's been a little tough there. So finalists at Wimbledon back to back, couldn't get it done. Was a finalist here last year to Swiatek and also didn't get it done. But something about this tournament, she plays the best tennis, and eventually, doesn't matter what sport we're betting on, when a player is this good and they're this high in the
Yeah.
world rankings, if they keep putting themselves in that position, eventually the chips will fall in their favor and they could get the W.
Ah, all right, I love that. Let's move on to the men's odds here. Obviously, the Joker, Djokovic, the favorite here, minus 110. But then you've got Alcaraz, I think that's how you pronounce it. A Spaniard that upset the Joker at Wimbledon. He's at plus 160. And then, of course, down the line here, oh, Jay Sinner, what a name that is, at plus 1200. Might have to just sprinkle a little bit on there just for funsies. But Dubs, is this something where like this is a rematch that everybody wants to see, right? I mean, how are we
Yeah,
going with this?
it's yeah. I mean, for the last 10, 15 years, there's been three names on the men's side of the board: the Fed Express, Federer, Rafael
Yeah,
Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. It's been the big three. I mean, Andy Murray, who's still out there mixing. I guess you could throw him in the conversation. We're saying, who's the next superstar in line? And lo and behold, last year, Carlos Alcaraz comes onto the scene at 19 years of age to win this very tournament. Now a winner at Wimbledon as well by taking down Novak Djokovic. And we're saying the youngest to ever reach world number one. It was just Rafael Nadal, the Spanish superstar, that we were praising. And now Carlos Alcaraz could be on a trajectory to
yeah,
meet the big three. But again, who's he have to go through? Novak Djokovic. And now we've got this rivalry building. I mentioned Carlos getting it done at Wimbledon. Well, we just had Cincy in the lead up to this one. Novak returns serve, no pun intended. So look, both sides, big threats here. They won't meet until the latter stages of the tournament, which is what we want to see
yeah.
as tennis bettors and tennis fans. And Alcaraz does come in as the number one seed, but the Joker is the number one at the book as the short price favorite.
Well, first of all, I thought that his kind of concession speech, I guess it would be at Wimbledon, was really, really well done. And when he looked up at his kids and he started crying, and he was like, "This is what it's about." It's not.
Yeah.
But he's so competitive. He's the best in the world. This has been circled on his calendar for a while. Like, I don't know that I could bet against the Joker here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the comp is like when I play golf with people who are much worse than me, I try and like play bad so we make it a little competitive where there's 3 holes to go, we get serious. I feel like Novak is actually happy that he's got a new rivalry
Yeah.
and it's going to take his game to new
Yeah.
levels because all these other young guys, they've failed to step up to the mark. But Carlos Alcaraz, he wants that smoke. His game is built to deliver. And you could argue that when you look at Carlos Alcaraz, what's so special about his game? He's not the biggest in stature, but it really is a combination of the big three. He's got that fight and tenacity of Nadal. He's got the speed and consistency of the Joker, and he turns that offense into defense on that counterattack that we've only seen with the likes of a Roger Federer. So Carlos Alcaraz is the name to watch for the next 10 to 15 years,
Wow.
but it's going to be very exciting the next 12 months, 2 years. Novak's currently sitting there with the most slams at 23, tied with Serena Williams. He's likely going to surpass that mark, but a nice little rivalry building here, and hopefully we get to see more of it at the biggest stages, which is right here for the US Open.
Yeah, definitely good for the sport to have a big rivalry like that going. Talk to me about Sinner here. I mean, I just like his name so much. Plus 1200. Any way you would sprinkle a little bit on the guy from different kind of down under, not your kind of down under. I mean, underworld, my man from the underworld.
Yeah, really. I mean, once you see this guy, like, no, it's the
Okay.
furthest thing from it, and it was going to be one of my favorite bets because he has been sneaking under the radar. So Yannick Sinner, young Italian, not the flashiest of players, but certainly has all the game in the world. No real weakness. So Yannick Sinner, a guy to watch. He's sort of got the shoulder length hair,
Yes.
curly hair, soft spoken. So Yannick Sinner, yeah, I think you'll like him,
I
Moxie.
already
His
do.
game
A
his
sneaky
his game
Italian
is
sinner?
certainly there.
Sign me
Yeah,
up.
that's it.
Sign
Glass of
sign me all the
glass
way
of vino,
up.
couple of tennis bets on Yannick Sinner, and look, he'll make it through
Okay,
to the second week here.
okay.
He's going to continue to show up on the big stages, so plenty of game there from the Italian stallion.
Alright, so maybe we don't bet him necessarily to win, but you can bet him on some of these early matches, but yeah, a sneaky Italian sinner, I mean, that's all I'm gonna say there. Alright, let's look at our countrymen here, right? We'll start with the
Okay,
Americans, top-ranked Americans. You got Jessica Pegula, Coco Gauff, we already talked about, number 6 in the world, Taylor Fritz, and Francis Tiafoe? Tiafoe?
TFO, yep,
Tiafoe?
yep.
Uh, is Coco Gauff probably the one that has the best chance? I mean, she is, when you look at the odds here, has the best chance to win, but is that kind of the only one you'd put money on for the Americans?
Yeah, look, out of the Americans, Coco's going to have the best chance. We mentioned the tear that she's been on the last month has obviously figured it out. Plus 700 thereabouts right now for Coco. I think that's a pretty good price. And this is a player that intimidates a lot of the older girls out there on the WTA. Just has that sheer power and athleticism. And obviously, is going to be built for the big stage. Has had that first title now, the breakthrough at the 1000 level for the WTA. Taking a look at some of the other big names, Jessica Pegula, still sitting there at 10 to 1, has been very consistent and has never been flashy early in the career as an amateur. Coming up through high school, the college ranks, was never the one. But now, suddenly sitting at third in the world rankings, you've got to put a bit of respect here. And I mean, this is a storyline that will continue to trend. Jessica's family, very wealthy. The dad, Terry, the family owns the Buffalo Sabres, the
Oh,
NHL team,
wow.
and also the Buffalo Bills. So this is
Oh,
an
she's
athlete.
rich,
This is
rich.
an athlete
She's
who
rich,
could
rich.
mail it in and say, look, I don't want to be out here playing tennis anymore. I'm going to go in the family business
Yeah.
and put the feet up. But full credit, Jessica Pegula over the last 2 3 years has really improved the game and now sits as the top ranked American in tennis. So a lot of respect and a lot to be wary of. Very consistent player who can grind into week two. And look, if you keep reaching the quarters, the semifinals, keep hanging around. Who knows? Jessica Pegula, certainly a name to watch with a bit of value.
Well, especially home court for her. If they own,
Exactly.
if she's
Can you
from New
imagine?
York, if she's from New
Yeah.
York, wow, that's really interesting. And wow, God, she grew up, but that's also
I
really
mean,
well. But I
she be getting the best lessons.
she's
She getting the best
yes,
coaches, the best
yes.
rackets. Yeah, for sure.
But also, to your point earlier, some people that grow up in that level of wealth don't have any kind of drive like this,
Yeah,
to be
absolutely.
competing at the level where she is. So that's definitely an interesting one to look at 10 to 1. How about your Aussies? You got Alex D. Minar?
The
The
demon,
demon.
Dimonor.
We got a sinner
Yeah,
and a demon. Tennis is
yeah, yeah,
tennis is a little riskier than
yeah.
I thought.
Right. Look, it's not looking good for us on the Aussie side of
Mm.
things. King Nick, he's not in attendance, but for the Demon, he's at a big price. And again, I think he's like 154 pounds ring and wet. He's a pesky opponent. He did have a win at Acapulco, which was on the outdoor on the hard surface. So obviously that suits, but doesn't have that power, has that tenacity, runs all over the court. Could he move through to week two? Yes. Could he win a slam? I would say not right now. I'd have to see him make it through to a couple of semi-finals to back with a bit of confidence as a better. As much as it pulls the heartstrings, I'd love to see an Aussie do well for Dimonor. Certainly a play where you can make some money moving through week one.
Ah, the demon. I love all of these nicknames. All right, you mentioned King Nick, currently unranked, not playing in the tournament. How much better is it when he's playing?
It is. I mean, this is a sport which needs superstars to drive in the casual bettors, the casual sports fans to watch, right? And Nick Kyrgios moves the needle. Is he a spoiled child at times? Yes. Is he a freakish athlete out on the tennis court at times? Also, yes. I mean, this guy's ability is unmatched, but as we've seen, causes a bit of a ruckus out there on the court. But that's also a part of the showmanship. You know, we mentioned Coco Golf. She can get pretty emotional
Yeah.
out there and sort of let fly. But Nick Kyrgios, that's part of the package that comes with playing against Nick. And I guess you could liken it to this a pretty tough comp, but an Antonio Brown, a John Daly on the golf
Okay.
course, players that you want to tune in to just see what happens.
Yeah.
In the state of tennis right now, where we're moving from the big three to Carlos Alcaraz, who else is out there? If I walked up to someone on the street saying, give us from 5 to 10 in the world rankings on the men's side of the tech, they'd say, I don't know, is Nick Kyrgios still wearing his Jordans out there at Wimbledon? Well, unfortunately, he's not playing in the US Open. He still has a niggling injury. Hopefully, he comes back, but he's the kind of guy, Mox, that if he doesn't want to play tennis anymore,
He won't.
he doesn't want to play tennis anymore, and it would not surprise me.
Yeah.
So let's see what next year holds, but we need superstars to move the needle, get more people invested, watching and betting on it, because as bettors, you only want to bet on athletes and
Yeah.
profiles that you know. And you either want to bet on Nick Kyrgios to win the whole thing, or you want to bet against him with the house and see him exit every single game
Yeah.
in straight sets. So, yes, I think Nick Kyrgios is certainly missed.
Well, and, athletes that bring the entertainment value, I hope unfortunately nobody ends up like AB. I think he went way too far left. But yes,
Yeah.
when you don't know what somebody's gonna do and they're a little bit of a loose cannon or they seem to have a screw loose, it is definitely more interesting because you're waiting on, pins and needles for something crazy to happen. Dubsy, we're gonna take a quick break here, but we come back, we're talking more tennis with our guy, Andrew Anderson, aka Dubsy from FanDuel TV. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? Two words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer: hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, welcome back to Moxie Bets presented by Caesars Sportsbook. We're here with Dubsy talking US Open tennis. He's dropping a lot of knowledge on here. All right, let's talk casual bettors here, people even like myself. How do you get started betting on tennis? Because I watched Wimbledon and I was very confused by the scoring.
Yeah, it's tough, and I guess we take a look at how we start. So we move through the first week with the big fields. We dwindle down. We halve the size as we move through the rounds here. But for the new bettor coming across, looking at tennis, I guess the first part to start with is know the surface. You know, horses for courses. Wimbledon's
Okay.
obviously out there on the grass. Roland Garros for the French Open is on the clay. But the base game where a lot of these players start the measuring stick is on the hard court. The Australian Open, the first Grand Slam on the hard court, and here at the US Open as well. So know what surfaces these players are suited for. We can tell by where they've grown up. We look at form, how they come into a tournament. But if we try to keep it simple, there's so many different prop markets here for every sport, especially playing the tennis. You can look at the match bets. Just play it simple. Who is going to win this game of tennis in 3 sets or 5 sets? Don't overthink it. But the way the draw is seeded, we do get some lopsided matchups early in week one. So you got to pay a lot of juice if you want to try and ride your favorites. So I would say the value lies moving into week two with the match betting. The value
Okay.
lies in week one is with the set betting, where you can get a very short price favorite and still find a bit of value by looking at the sets, looking at the games. We have handicaps trying to level these things out as well. And we can get really specific looking at some different prop markets there as well.
Well, that was going to be my next question to you, is kind of the difference between match betting versus set betting. So you do set betting in the earlier rounds. That's where you find the value. And then as it starts to dwindle down, then you start looking at the head to head matchups.
Yeah, and I mean, the idea is by seeding the top 32 in the tournament is that none of them are going to meet until week two. So Carlos Alcaraz could be going against, a wild card qualifier coming into the tournament, and you're looking at minus 450 to win, the first round. It's tough to find value there, but where you can is looking at some of the set betting, looking at some of the games totals. You know, a lot of these marks have been set at 38 in the hook. And if you think, well, Carlos is just going to blast through in 3 sets, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, we're only getting to 30 games in total. You can look at different ways to get a little creative. So I would say match betting in week 2, where it starts to level out the playing field. And certainly some of the prop markets, set betting, we can get a little creative early here in the tournament. But it's a great sport to bet on. You know, you look at the way we look at some of the other sports, a lot of form coming into this one, but it really is head to head, but it's an
Yeah.
individual sport. So the matchups of different players is a big thing. So you've got to look at past history, how certain players have done against each other in the
Yeah.
past, more so than even the form coming into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of, obviously, football betting even. You look at the head-to-head matchups, you see how they've done against this team or this particular defense, and you talked about the surfaces. So there's grass, clay, and what, like, astro or what, like, just
Well, we,
court
we call it the
hard?
hard
Yeah.
court. Yeah, we call it
Okay.
the hard court, essentially concrete there. And, clay's going to be a lot stickier, a lot slower surface. So you can really maneuver around the floor, try and play that chess style of tennis. Out there on the grass, it's really quick. They are fast points. The ball is skimming across that surface. Out here on the hard court, you're going to be rewarded for sort of longer, ground, stronger shots, which is why we see the likes of a Djokovic, Daniel Medvedev, a bit of a hard court specialist. And I guess you could liken it to the PGA Tour, the golf betting. Certain golfers line up really well to certain golf courses. Certain tennis players line up really well to certain surfaces. And here in 2023, we don't get much of a grass season,
Yeah.
going into Wimbledon anymore. A bulk of what we see on the WTA and the ATP side of things is based out on the hard court. So that's always essentially the starting point, and how well these players can adjust their game to other surfaces is what we're looking for.
Yeah, and there can always be upsets, right? Because I remember reading at Wimbledon, Swiatek had never lost on grass or something, or
Yeah.
she was, like, undefeated on grass, and then she didn't have, the tournament that she thought she was going to. So, who are your favorite tennis players to bet on? I mean, I know we talked about how it's fun to bet on the demon, or not the demon, on King Nick. But these favorites like a Djokovic or an Iggy sometimes are so egregious in the odds that maybe the casual bettor's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna, lay the minus 1,200 on Djokovic in this." But and you talked about match betting versus set betting, but, who are some players that maybe have some value, that you like to gamble on?
Yeah, so I think Daniel Medvedev is sort of disrespected in the marketplace just because he's not the most likable out there on the court. He's an absolute firebrand, but you look at where he does well, and it's on this surface. It's 6'6", a winner here at the US Open in 2021, and he's still sitting at double digits at plus 1,000. So for Daniel Medvedev, a guy who's not afraid of the big stage, he's certainly live. Yannick Sinner, the young Italian, still on the come up with plenty of games. Sebastian Korda is another young American player who's got a very bright future. And Taylor Fritz, the big swinging Taylor Fritz with that shoulder length hair. I mean, he's had a monster prize. And he does have the game, and he has that massive serve. We saw it at Indian Wells last year. He's had a decent run of it this year, 31 matches. He
Wow.
has won on the hard court so far just in 2023 alone. So a lot of the casual bettors will come across and say, it's Djokovic, it's Carlos Alcaraz, but there are some very good players who are built for the big stage, and they want their time to shine at Flushing Meadows. Yannick Sinner is certainly one of them. Daniel Medvedev, absolutely a horse for this course.
A horse for this course. I love that. Any favorite tournament that you like to bet on? Or, I mean, there's the big ones, there's the majors, but anything else?
Well, look, we start with the Australian Open. Been
Yeah.
there, done that. The French Open at Roland Garros. I don't want to get my shoes dirty. We see the pomp and ceremony of Wimbledon out there on the Turf Club. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But for me, the bright lights of New York City, the
Woo!
US Open, and we look at the past winners, this is probably where we can see the most chaos. I think this is where we could potentially see a favourite. And we've been talking a lot about Iga Swiatek on the women's side of things, has been prone to go through an upset. You look at the past winners the last 3 years here on the men's side of things. Look, a lot of talk about King Carlos Alcaraz and
Yeah.
Djokovic, but some of these other names were thrown into the equation. If they can make it through to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, they are going to be a very tough task of trying to get through, because it's not just the 4 Grand Slams that these guys show up and play against one another. We see it at the ATP level and WTA, the 1,000 events, the Elevate events, and some of these other players have shown they've got the ability to topple the big names. But on the betting side of things, just keep in mind, especially on the live betting side of things, how many sets these players are playing through week one. On the
Mm.
ladies' side, going through 3 sets, it does get taxing. It does get tiring. That can take a bit of stamina out moving through the quarterfinals. And on the men's side, you don't want to see the players out there for too long. Older guys like Novak Djokovic get a bit of lactic acid. It can start to tire moving through the latter stages of this tournament. And of course, as bettors, know the draw. Know which side of the draw your players are coming from. If you're looking to jump into the outright market, don't take 2 players on the same side of the board that could potentially meet in the quarterfinals or the
Ah,
semifinals,
yeah.
because then you're taking yourself out of the mix. So if you want to have a bit of security, look towards the top of the board, the bottom of the board, and hopefully your 2 players can meet in the final.
Ooh, I love that. All right, Dubsy, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've got a gauntlet of a couple days. You can catch Dubsy on air every day on FanDuel TV, talking golf, talking tennis, talking ponies. You're headed out to Del Mar today. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Hey, yeah. So we got a big race coming up, the Pacific Classic. It's a great one on Saturday down there at the Seaside Oval. So for anyone who's looking to play the ponies, I mean, we wager on anything, Mox. Dubsy, the degenerate. I mean, it's in full effect. But the Pacific Classic on Saturday, a very big horse race. Go Rocket Ride, short price favorite. I'm going to throw a price in here, a decent price. Arabian Night for Bob Baffert.
Ooh,
That's where we're looking if you want to
okay.
jump in and play the ponies.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you're betting it, I'm betting it. You can follow Dubsy at Mr. Dubsy on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it today. And make sure that you watch him on FanDuel TV as well. Dubsy, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social at Moxie Bets. And we'll see you next week.